Welcome back. Ride-sharing services like Uber, they're making a huge dent in the taxi business. Things have gotten so bad in New York City, several cab drivers have literally taken their own lives. Dom visited the city to speak with the cabbies and get their side of the story. Dom?
Well, Richard, the cabbies that we spoke with are taking a beating financially, and they say they have not been treated fairly by the city.
You see, that's what I'm telling you, the Uber. That's the problem.
Taxi drivers say mounting debt has turned to outright desperation. Nina Gordashi, you've been driving cabs for some 10 years. 7 taxi drivers have committed suicide. Why?
Because the economic problems they have, the city creates, since we allowed the Uber to serve the people in the city without paying medallions. That's why people, they do suicide, because they cannot pay the bills, they cannot pay mortgage, they cannot pay the college for the kids. It's really
bad.
very, very, very bad.
So you're telling me a medallion cost $1 million?
Over $1 million. A single medallion was $1,050,000. So this city should reimburse the yellow cab. How are you going to make level playing field when I paid $1 million and someone paid 0? How? It's impossible.
Taxi drivers even held one protest, placing 4 coffins in front of City Hall. Those medallions that once sold for more than $1 million are now in the ballpark for as little as $175,000, according to the Taxi and Limousine Commission. Driver Dorothy LeConte, who owns her medallion, is in her 60s and says she is forced to work 7 days a week. She says earning $400 for one daily shift used to be a good day, but that doesn't happen now. One recent day where it rained, she says she pulled in $287. Out of that $287 for one day's work, money has to be set aside to pay back the medallion loan, insurance, workers' compensation, gas, and repair and maintenance of the vehicle, even replacing tires, which doesn't leave much. So you're telling me there are some days when you only make enough money to pay for the medallion of this taxi?
Yes.
But then how do you eat? How do you live?
That's
what about your mortgage?
That's what you have to ask me. How do I eat? How do I survive?
Everything needs to be fixed.
And this man, known as Nino, is the spokesman for the group of taxi drivers.
They see no hope. A lot of people do not believe that the yellow cab will overcome all these nightmares. And actually, we felt betrayed and abandoned by the city more than 3 years ago in the name of technology.
The drivers also complained of what they said are numerous regulations they face, giving Uber another competitive edge, like car inspections every 4 months. Taxi drivers, as ordered by the city, also have to outright buy a new vehicle every few years. What makes it so tough for taxi drivers financially?
Financially, our business dropped 35%. What we used to make years ago, we can't make it anymore. We could come in the street expecting a rush hour, there's no rush hour. While there are dozens of taxis running with no passenger, and you see an Uber driver or maybe a Lyft or Via picking up in the corner, because instead of they pick up 1 passenger, they could pick up 5, 10, 6 passengers at the same time. So they swap everything who belongs to us, they are taking it, and then the worst part, in the evening time, when business is slow, Uber lower the price.
In a statement, an Uber spokesman told us, quote, drivers who own individual medallions have been left behind by change and exploited by lenders, and we support actions that eases their financial burden.
Well, due respect, how good of Uber to say that. But my point, Dom, is, listen, I'm a capitalist. I believe in the free market system. But they were forced to play by a set of rules. that was mandated, by the legislature. It said, no. And by the way, a lot of them I want them to go in for mandatory safety checks and everything else. I want to make sure that they're licensed drivers and that they have insurance and all the rest. But it's not a fair fight, is my point. I think you really effectively communicate that with the piece. And literally, you're having people who pooled up their whole family's monies, right? It's not just theirs. The whole family pitched in here, relatives from back home, wherever they came from and everything else, put the life savings into this. And now, in a matter of a couple of years, the value of it's gone down fivefold. Not because they were a bad driver, but because rules apply to them, but not to anyone else.
Richard, I have never seen anything like this before in my life. I came into this assignment. I was like, so what? Uber's on the road now. And I'm going to be honest with you, particularly as an African American, and a lot of African Americans, they're like, hey, remember you wouldn't pick us up for years? So, But, Richard, the fact of the matter is, if you're forced, think about this, Brodsky, to pay, to your point, $1 million to change your vehicle every 4 years, every 4 or 5 years, go through inspections every 4 months, and your main competitor that's taking all the business pays absolutely nothing. That's not right.
And doesn't face the same safety regulation. If they had to do it over again, and some cities have not allowed Uber and the rest here.
You can apply the same safety requirements that you apply to yellow cabs could be applied to Uber.
But there's even pricing mandates by the city, though. No, but this be even say that they're not allowed to change their rates at different times and all the rest.
There are ways to ease up on the yellow cabs alone. That will not restore the value of a medallion from $175 to $1 million. That is a function of technology, and people made a bad bet. The taxpayer should not have to come in and make up that difference. But Uber
wait a second. If I'm a disabled person, taxis are mandated to be disabled friendly. An Uber driver can just say, no, not picking you up. How's that right?
You're asking me to defend that?
Well, no, but not you, but elected officials made a decision to have two different sets of rules.
Uber should be, those rules should apply to Uber. There are additional rules that apply to yellow cabs should be loosened. That will not fundamentally change the economic situation of someone who paid $1 million for a business license.
Okay, we're getting hung up on the million, which is a big part of the story. But at the end, Richard, why hasn't something happened to this point? Is it because, frankly, lobbying money and whatever has protected the Ubers of the world?
It hasn't happened anywhere. There's very little.
There are some cities that have prohibited.
Very few. They've prohibited Uber, but that's a consumer issue as well. Uber is providing cheaper service that's a little bit more accessible. The government has done a bad job here, but technology is the real villain.
I'm torn on this, and we've talked about this before, and I'm sort of with Brodsky when it comes to the $1 million medallion. I'm with Brodsky. I was with Brodsky on the $1 million medallion, because it's the market, and that's like saying people who do horse-drawn carriages aren't being treated fairly with the same rules that taxi drivers are. I mean, it's one form of technology update.
Car. That's not a fair comparison.
It is though, because it's the accessibility of the whole thing. I think you can ease up some of the regulations and make them a little more even between the two. You want to let yellow cabs, have apps that they can get picked up. I'm fine with that too. We can balance things out a little
rides.
bit. Sure.
Time of search
but keep in mind, the medallions still have to stop when hailed, and Ubers don't necessarily have to do that. I don't know.
All I know is this wasn't a free market fair fight, because they were forced to do something and forced to abide by certain rules. And now all of a sudden, mid-game, the rules changed, and the new kids got to do whatever they wanted.
Well said.
Doesn't feel fair. All right, coming up next, ABC News political director Rick Klein. He'll join us to talk about where we stand on the midterms on a national level. We'll get into that and more after this.